this is Dr. Karen Becker, and I'm in my kitchen this morning. I'm making bone broth for my dog Ada, and I decided it would be a good idea if I showed you how to make bone broth, because you may have an instance in your family where bone broth would be a nourishing opportunity for your pets to help recover from illness, or just to help keep older dogs eating. So bone broth is a tradition that has been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and some of you may already make bone broth for your pets. There's lots of different ways to make bone broth, and there really isn't a wrong way. I'm going to show you the way that I make bone broth. You certainly will find variations on the internet, and there's not really a wrong way to do it. So here's the premise. You've probably all heard that chicken noodle soup is kind of a soul food, and when we're all sick, we want certain foods that really comfort us. Well, there's research now that proves that there's science behind why certain types of foods are comforting to, nourishing to people and comforting to pets. So when we soak a whole chicken or cook a whole chicken, simmer a whole chicken, and the meat falls off the bone, of course that delicate, juicy meat is very, very good for anorexic pets. So I use a lot of bone broth during hospice care, when animals are dying, when they're no longer interested in eating or chewing food. Oftentimes they'll lap broth. This morning I'm making bone broth because my healthy 8-year-old pit bull, Ada, is allowed to kind of wander around our property. We have 42 acres. She doesn't go far, but she does get into grass and poo and dirt, and she has been throwing up the last couple of days. She's not feeling well. So I'm gonna make bone broth. We fasted her yesterday. She barfed 5 or 6 times yesterday. We did confirm she does not have a blockage, which means she doesn't need to go to surgery, but her GI tract is inflamed. She's had blowout diarrhea. She doesn't feel good. So we fasted her yesterday. I'm going to make her bone broth this morning, which is a great first food for animals that are recovering from GI irritation or illness. But if you have a pet that's finicky, you can use it as a topper to their food. If you have a pet that doesn't want to eat anything, this is a great way to get the body going, the GI tract going, and it provides really concentrated nourishment. So when you cook any bone, you can use, I'm going to use a whole organic chicken today. You can use beef thigh bones. You can use whatever bones you wish. But when you cook those bones and the meat falls off the bone, that's a great first food, and of course pets really like that. But if you continue to simmer the bones will release all of those minerals and marrow into the water, and then that broth becomes a really healthy, nourishing food, first food or end food, depending on when you offer it to your pets. So it is important. I need to tell you it's not a balanced diet, so please, if your pets love it, you have to feed them more than bone broth in their life. But it's a great way for you to offer extra nourishment in a really palatable form. So you always start with healthy water whenever you're cooking. We have a whole house water filtration system. We are in a well here, but we have an iron curtain which helps filter out all the impurities. So I just filled my pot up with water. You can also use a really big stock pot, and you'll see that oftentimes on the internet. You can use a ton of water, like 3 to 4 gallons. It depends on how much bone broth you want to make. I prefer to make bone broth fresh and use it right away. You can make it and freeze it, and there's no problem in doing that, but I really prefer to make it fresh. So I'm going to make this today in a smaller stock pot. I've added my water. You can use whatever bones your heart desires. You can use leftover bones. So if you've grilled out, if you've got extra bones, you can simmer them and make bone broth. I bought a whole organic chicken, and that's what I'll be using for today's bone broth. I do recommend, obviously, that you are feeding organic meats to your pets whenever possible, just because obvious pesticides, residues are not going to be passed up the food chain. Also, happy, healthy animals that died and were sacrificed for us or our pets to consume make healthier meats for our animals. So this is an organic chicken I got from Whole Foods. I'm just going to rinse it off. And basically we're going to simmer this chicken for a couple of hours until all the meat falls off the bones. Now, once the meat falls off the bones, I'm going to put the chicken down in the water, turn him on, and just do a low simmer for a couple of hours. Once the meat falls off the bones, because Ada's hungry, she hasn't eaten in 48 hours, I'm going to offer her that meat and skin. Then I'm going to continue cooking the carcass, the bones, for another 24 hours on a very, very, very low heat. One important thing that you add to your stock pot is vinegar. So you need to add a little bit of vinegar to the water. Acetic acid, vinegar, helps leach the minerals from the bones into the stock water, which is ultimately what you're going to be feeding your pet. It is important to note you never feed your pet cooked bones ever. So we will boil these bones down to the point that they basically dissolve, but any remaining cooked bone fragments we throw out. So we don't feed any bones to the pets. The goal is to extract as many minerals out of the bones and into the broth water, which we will be feeding to our pets, as possible. So what we do to help extract the minerals out of the bones is we add some acetic acid or vinegar. So I'm using Bragg raw apple cider vinegar. You can use whatever vinegar you have in the house. You don't have to buy Bragg. I like Bragg because it's raw and unfiltered. It hasn't been pasteurized. It's about a teaspoon per gallon of water. As you can see, I'm not a measuring cook, so we add enough that at least we're getting the job done with the minerals. So I'm going to turn it on, cook it till the meat falls off the bones. That'll be probably about 2.5 hours. I'll stir it now and then. And once the bones are separate from the meat, I'll remove the meat and some of this broth and then add more water and cook it again to make a second round of bone broth. We're about 2.5 hours in. This is what things look like. We have an excited pack. The meat isn't all the way off the bone, so I'm going to let it simmer for a couple more hours. It's a little bit lower temperature than I normally have it at. But it's looking pretty good. You can see that the fat rises to the top. Skin's coming off the chicken. Some meat's falling off the bone. We'll check in again in a couple of hours. So the chicken has been cooking about 4.5 hours. I have a second pot here where I'm collecting all the bones. The meat has just fallen off the bone, so I'm going to put the bones and the skin into a second pot. And once all the bones have been removed, then I'll be able to feed the meat and broth to Ada for the first round, and then I'll cook down this round of bones for the second round of bone broth. Okay, so I have removed all of my extra bones and skin that were not broken down through this first round. I'm doling out some nice broth and juice in Ada's bowl. I'm going to let this totally cool before I would feed her the bone broth. For my second round of bones, fish out everything that didn't get broken down. Add more pure water. Add another splash of vinegar and repeat the whole process. Now for these bones to have the minerals leached out additionally and be further broken down, I'll probably end up having to simmer these bones for the next 24 hours. So I'll let you know what this looks like tomorrow morning. So this is Bernard eating bone broth. He is not anorexic or sick or dying or anything other than enjoying the benefits of bone broth. Bernard, this is for your sister Ada. This is your bone broth. Huh? It's your first meal. Okay, so this is the second round of bone broth. I took the bones and skin that was left over off the first round that I gave Ada yesterday, added some more water, some more vinegar, and cooked it on low for the last 24 hours. What we're left with, there's still bones in here, but they're really, really soft. So you can do two things. I prefer to run this through a strainer, drain off the fluid, and then feed it to my pets, let it cool and feed it to my pets. Some people will take all this and whiz it up in a blender, and so the bones are really, really fine. They're very, very soft now, but you still have to whiz them up if you're going to feed them to your pets to be finely, finely, finely ground, because obviously cooked bone can be a choking hazard. I don't feed cooked bones to my pets at all, so what I'm just going to do is drain this off, let the fluid, the broth cool, and then feed it to my pets. My kitties love it, my dogs love it, everyone loves it. Great thing to offer them just for health benefits in terms of a natural mineral supplement, but also really a nice way to offer pets a bland diet, a nutritious diet if they're not feeling good or if they're anorexic, if they have a stomach ache.
or if they're finicky, it's a great all-natural topper to foods that they otherwise are not really excited about eating. So now you have seen how I've made bone broth.